Get Pucked. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Get Pucked. New year, same crew, Dave, Matt, myself. I'm Matt, that's Vito. Starting off strong. Sorry, boys, a little New Year's hangover still going real powerful a week later. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. Welcome back. We're hoping to provide another year's worth of content this time around. I know we started a little bit late last year, but we're very excited to be back, and we're going to dive right into it. So, first thing first, good news for the Canadiens organization. This is something that I think everybody unanimously is pretty much on the same page about, which is fantastic. The hiring of Chantal Machabée as the VP of Communications. I, for one, think this is fantastic. Vito, I clearly know you probably think this is a great hire. If we will do a little callback when we're talking about potential GM candidates, Vito threw a dark horse out and said Chantal. Okay, it's not GM, but obviously the organization recognized something there that Vito saw too. So you get a little clap, sir. And I guess just what's your take on it, boys? Even though I'm pretty sure I know what it is. Vito, go ahead. It's your candidate.
It's a good hire. I mean, like you mentioned on episode 10, I brought up that should be a good candidate as the assistant GM. I saw her as an AGM. It was. Albeit I did say in the episode too, I didn't think it was going to happen, and I was right on that part too. It didn't happen, but she's part of the Habs administration now. She belongs with the Montreal Canadiens. She's there. She got hired, and I think now when I look back at it, it's a perfect position for her, and I think she's going to help maybe repair what seems like a bit of a what's the word I'm looking for? Maybe a bit of tension or friction between the media and the Montreal Canadiens in general. So that's good. It brings in another woman into the fold. So I'm really happy for her. I don't know her personally, but I'm happy she's part of the administration now.
Yeah, I think it's obviously a great hire. I've come across. I've worked with her a few times at the Bell Center. I've seen her in the room and whatnot. She's obviously a great person, great human being from all accounts. And I think it goes to really the important part of repairing, because it is, I think, a broken relationship between the Canadiens and the media, right? Marc Bergevin ushered in this era of secrecy and this era of kind of, and I'm not saying it's necessarily Marc Bergevin's fault. It's probably, his PR guy, Paul Wilson, was part of that too. But for the longest time, the Canadiens were inaccessible, and it almost seemed to be adversarial, right? It seemed to be the Canadiens versus the media, and the Canadiens versus the press and whatnot. And I'll tell you a story. When I first started working at TSN 690 and working with on the shows, I was working with Chris Nyland, and one of the first ever things he gives me, he's like, who should we have on as a guest? And as a joke, I kind of said, let's do Marc Bergevin, right? And he's like, all right, I'll give him a call. And then he slides me Marc Bergevin's number, and he's like, all right, call Marc Bergevin. And we had him on the show, right? We had him, we got to have him on for 20 minutes. About, a few months later, this I think was in, October, maybe in January, he tried to reach out to Marc again to have him on. And Marc said, your last interview killed me. Everybody wanted a piece of me. Everybody, the Canadiens kind of scolded me to say not to do it again, because if I do you, I have to do every single show. I have to do every single media. So he never really came on ever again on TSN 690, other than, for a press conference here or there, or whenever there was really big news. And I think that goes to show that, they didn't really know how to handle the media, right? It was either all or nothing. It was never just like, hey, you can have this. At the beginning, also when I first started, we had Brendan Gallagher on weekly. That stopped quickly, and you never really see the Canadiens. It's very controlled and very rehearsed, everything the Canadiens do. So
I think even Mitch Melnick mentioned it on an episode this week. They tried to get Nick Suzuki on, and the Canadiens basically said no. So they went around it to his agent, and his agent said sure, and they ended up getting Nick Suzuki that way. But it wasn't through the Montreal Canadian channel.
So are we suggesting now, with Chantal there being a 30-year plus veteran of media and everything like that she's going to bridge that sort of gap that now exists, and that we might have a greater access to the team?
Absolutely. I think so in the sense that I think she understands the importance, right? I think that the Canadiens were so scared that a player would go on and say something stupid or say something off brand, and that they wanted to control the message and control what's out there. And I think that she understands the importance. If you don't see Nick Suzuki or hear from Nick Suzuki and he's in a slump, like it's not good. It doesn't look good on the organization. It doesn't look good that the Canadians take it for granted, I guess, because what the media is the arm of the fans, right? The media is the voice of the fans. They represent the fans, and they're the link. They're the lucky ones that get to go. We're the lucky ones that get to go into the room and speak to the media on behalf of the fans. Whereas the Canadians kind of in the past 10 years morphed it into the media as a marketing opportunity, and that's all there is. It's marketing. That's it. They send their positive brand out to the media, and that's it. You don't really have access truly to the Canadians. And I think that Chantal Machabée is in a prime position to understand that. She's well respected by legitimately everybody.
Everyone.
I don't know a single person who has a bad thing to say about Chantal Machabée. Not even behind the scenes. Guys, sometimes you hear, oh, these guys are so nice, but you hear a snipe here or there, a gripe here or there behind the scenes working in this industry. Nothing for Chantal Machabée. Everybody adores her. So she's arguably become in Quebec, especially on the French side, as big a star as some of the Canadians players. She encompasses Quebec media, and I think that she'll do a great job.
Do you think there's any no? Do you think there's any
good.
chance? Do you think there's any chance that the Montreal Canadiens were like that with the media to kind of protect some of the players? Like when they're like you used an example of Suzuki being on a slump, and some of our fans can, and even certain media outlets can be a little hard on certain players and start to almost get to the point where it almost looks like they're destroying him.
Do you want to know what I think, honestly, just quickly? Because you're talking about like why the Canadians might have done it, and I don't want to go down this avenue, but it's something that I thought about a long time, and I was always curious when you had players go and speak to media. Obviously, the vast majority of our players don't speak French, and they would slant towards maybe speaking and going to the English outlets more so than the French, and perhaps that was a balance that Canadians just couldn't handle. Like they would be more comfortable, even if it's talking to the French correspondents that speak English and then try to translate it. They like to know that their message is being sent out the way that they intended it to be sent out. And maybe that was always a reason why they kind of said, okay, you know what, let's just not make them available across the board unless if it's in a press conference at the end of the game. It was always kind of in the back of my mind. I'm not saying that's the reason, but that might be something.
It's it's definitely a point, and if that's the case, then that's even worse than what I thought.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a terrible reason. I mean, at the end of the day, you don't think RDS would take Nick Suzuki on their program, just put subtitles underneath? Absolutely, they would. To say, oh, no, I'm not going to have an English guest on because he's English. And the Canadians do have enough French-speaking players that they could have.
Now they do.
Even back in the day, man, like they could have figured it out. And if that's the scenario, that's just like they grasped at the easiest excuse they could probably have.
I hope it's not the case. Again, I'm not suggesting that is the case. It's something that I had mused about in the past. I thought perhaps it'd be something like you didn't want to show a bias to one way or another. But at the end of the day, I think I agree with you guys. I think this hire is probably one of the best hires the organization has done in a very long time. And I'm very, very eager to see what exactly she's going to be able to do to bring forth a better sense of transparency to the fans, to open up that secret bunker that the Canadians have been in the past 10 years. Not to give all the secrets away, but just to give a little bit more, a little bit more insight, a little bit more engagement with the players, with the coaches, with the GM to come and Jeff Gorton too. Like, I think that would be very, very good for the city and for the team.
I have a question for you guys.
Hit us.
So we obviously stated before that we would like to have a woman as a GM or as an assistant GM. So they did bring in a woman in the fold. Do we think that bringing in Chantal diminishes the chances of having a woman as a GM or assistant GM now?
Nope.
That's an interesting question because that actually crossed my mind a little bit.
Nope. I would say no. I mean, I would say no. I would hope no. I can't. It would be the weirdest thing if that ever somehow, some way got out and you found out down the road that the Canadians purposely did this in order to not have to bring
I'm not saying purposely, because I do think they wanted Chantal Machabée. Like I believe that they wanted her. She's right for the role, right? But I'm saying now that they brought her in,
does it ease the pressure of maybe bringing some like a woman in? I mean. Maybe to like the most like tiniest degree, maybe, because they can always come back and say, listen, we interviewed people, we just like these two people better. And not that they'll say, oh, and by the way, we did just hire Chantal. They'll never say that, but the fan base can always say, well, yes, and perhaps there'll be other hires to come as well, right? And there'll be a whole bunch of diverse cast, and it could be, across the board. We can see a whole slew of different type of characters coming in here, and that'd be fantastic. But if you were to ask me right now, the simple answer would be no, I don't think so. I think if Emily, I keep messing her. I want to say
Gaston.
Okay, it is. All right. So if she is the right fit for assistant GM or GM, then she will be hired. And if she's not quite what they're looking for, then she won't be, regardless whether Chantal was brought in or not.
I think that's fair. And I think that's fair also in the sense that at the end of the day, while Chantal Machabée is the perfect position, in what other market would the hiring of a communications person be this big news, right? It doesn't, at the end of the day, it's cool. It's awesome. It's great for her. It's great for the media. It's great for us. It's great for me. I'm happy. Everybody's happy. But at the end of the day, it's not really that, it's not that important of a position in terms
of hockey decisions,
of hockey operations.
Yes.
So if you're going to point to that hire and say hey, look, our communications person is a woman, so we're not going to have a GM. I mean, the thought did cross my mind, and it's sad that it does. Yes. But it did cross my mind. But at the end of the day, I'm going to be an optimist. I'm going to side with Matt and say no. I think that it will not.
And you were right. You were right to side with me. But okay, now let's switch gears quickly. Let's just switch gears, because talking all the good, obviously the Canadiens in the shape they are, it's not good. So let's talk a little bit about the bad, and let's talk about what just happened last night. So Arizona, who's been right there at the bottom of the teams in the league, they won their game against Chicago. And what that does as a result, for those that might not know, is in terms of point percentage winning, the Canadiens are now dead last. Arizona does sit theoretically in the 32nd spot, but they have one less win and they have 2 games in hand. All right, so that means the Canadiens are the worst team percentage-wise in the league. A lot of people coming out saying this is the all-time worst team ever. They're awful. I don't want to watch this, yada, 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 and all the rest of the crap that they're saying. And they're right to say it, but hear me out on this for a second. I want to get you guys' take on what you think about this. I think this couldn't have happened at a better time. If you tried to write fiction about this, you couldn't do a better job. All right. You were supposed to have a draft in Montreal last year. If that draft would have gone through, the Canadiens would have drafted 31st overall. It's basically a really high second round pick. Let's be real, right? It's in the first round, but whatever. It's the second to last pick of the first round. And that would have been their pick. Whatever. We're not going to talk about who they picked, but it's the position. Now, that didn't happen. The draft gets pushed to this year. It's going to be in person, hopefully with Omicron, all the other crap that's out there. It'll be in Montreal this year, in person. And the Canadiens currently are contending for the best odds to get the first overall pick. In doing so, most people would say, well, the team has to be awful and nobody wants to see that. And the Habs have been, mediocre at best for the better part of a decade. And it's, just getting the playoffs, just not getting the playoffs and getting the 15th, 16th, 17th overall pick. So here you have a team that just went to the Stanley Cup Finals, just won the Western Conference title, right? They'll never do that again. That was exciting. That was fun to see. It's something we got to live through. You got that good high, that good push. First Stanley Cup appearance since 93. Now you got a team that is decimated with injuries and COVID. You're basically icing the Laval Rocket as your main roster. Okay, basically. You have maybe three main core players left. The rest are, in fact, you have an ECHL player on the team currently. Okay, that's how bad it is. If this team loses every game going forward, I don't think as many people are going to care because it's expected now. They're expected to lose. It's not like you're icing your core team and they're losing every game and it's like, Jesus, come on. You got all these good players and everything's out there. What is happening? This team is not designed to win anymore. I know you can't tank on purpose, but the way things worked itself out, the draft back in Montreal, they're in a position to get the first overall pick, a thing that most of us on this
What's
call
the question?
My question is this, all right? It's not so much a question as much as it is, do you agree or disagree? It's, do you believe that the fates are working together to make this moment an incredibly pivotal, special moment in this franchise's history and to give it the absolute best kickstart possible for a rebuild? Because you're going to be in Montreal with a first overall pick, presumably, and you can draft an amazing talent right off the bat of getting a new GM, a new VP of Hockey Ops, who are going to usher this into a new era? Are the fates with us, or some shit going to happen and we're all going to get derailed? What do you think? Dave, you first.
Me first. Okay, all right. Well, very romantic way of looking at things in this pandemic, and I like it. I don't know. Man. It is honestly perfect. You can draw. You said it best. You can draw up a better script than this, right? Like the Canadiens are so terrible and their roster is so bad. Not even on purpose, just because they have to by NHL, by governmental decree. They're terrible. So it is working out for them, and it's working out at the right time, right? Because at the beginning of the year when they started sucking, what were we always talking about? The three of us, they're too good of a team to tank. They're too good of a team to tank. At least that was my belief. They're too good to tank. Now, all of a sudden, they're not good. They don't have any players left to play. And the more games they can play, I mean, it's even sad that they couldn't get to play these games at the Bell Center this week and they were all postponed because those would have been 3 Ls guaranteed. At the end of the day, you know how we talk about like, oh, can this guy come in and this? You need NHL players to win in the NHL. That's how good the NHL is. And no matter how good of your prospects are, no matter how good your American Hockey League guys are, they cannot compete in the NHL. So when you bring them up and you force them to play these insane roles and have Michael Pezzetta on your second line, you're bound for a disaster. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So I think that, yeah, absolutely. The stars are lining up, whatever you want to call it. If you want to call it faith or whatever the heck you want to, destiny, sure. Yeah. And it's going to make for a hell of a storyline in Montreal when they pick the guy that nobody wants instead of Shane Wright. And it's going to be, should you have picked Shane Wright? Should you not have picked Shane Wright? It's going to make for a great media fodder for the next 5 years. So,
I can't believe you just said that. I was discussing that with Matt. I'm like, we were just wondering if there's even a chance that Montreal, let's say they do get the first overall pick, they skip Shane Wright.
If there was a team, only one team in this league that has the potential of getting the first overall pick and not taking the clear consensus like overall pick, it's this team.
I think there are more chances of them falling out, being in the position for the first overall and losing the lottery and falling out of it than them not drafting Shane Wright if they are first overall.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. But I mean, you know, like ultimately,
it's just that kind of year.
But we're all fans of the team, right? And what it boils down to was kind of this is what I was trying to get at is like we hate watching them lose. You go look at Edmonton, who was on such a high, and they basically lost every single game they played in December. And you know they're talking about firing everybody, and they're talking about like McDavid and Draisaitl need to get out of there if they ever want to win. And it's like they were on such a high, and now completely in the toilet. But they're icing their team. That whole team that they have constructed is there and playing, and they're just shit now.
They forgot one piece though, a goaltender.
They got the goal.
They've been forgetting a goaltender for a few years now.
They got the goalies that they chose to go with. That's my point. Their team is out there. I feel for the Edmonton Oilers fan base because their team is out there and they were doing so great, and now for no reason apparent, they're all shit. Now, when you look at us, when you look at in Montreal and our fan base, we're like, well, you know what, guys? Yes, we don't like our team losing, but frankly, I mean, if we're going to go through rebuilding, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, I'd rather watch the Laval Rocket lose because if anybody comes to me, I'll be like, well, look who's out there. Instead of watching my main guys out there and getting slashed around all the time and getting dunked on. It's a weird way how it worked out, but it's making the losing palatable.
100% agree.
Do you agree with that, Vito? Is it palatable to you, or do you still want wins? Do you still need the team to win?
No, I mean at this stage, I'm even for them going through a complete rebuild. And to go through a rebuild, you need to pile on the losses, not the wins. I want high picks for the next 2-3 drafts, and I'm okay with it. I don't want to have a team that year in and year out they're just getting into the playoffs. Oh, we'll see what happens once we're in the playoffs. And yes, we have Carey Price, but we don't have Carey Price. We don't have our regular roster that we're supposed to have to really say, hey, you know what? They can compete. So we don't really know what our roster today could do. But I could tell you one thing. I wasn't crazy about what our roster looked like when we looked and said, okay, we lost Corey Perry, we lost Dano and whatever, and we lost Kotkaniemi and so on, and replaced them with Paquette, Perreault, etc. So we didn't know what the season was going to look like for this team anyway. And no, now we're at the point where don't win. Don't pile on wins. I know it feels good as a team to win, and as a player, these players, this is their job, and they're coming into they're in a constant losing environment. But fuck it. They need to get the loss. So I want the top 3 pick this year. And if we can, I'm even willing to say I want a top 3 pick next year. They're 2 deep drafts that Montreal has a lot of picks for, and they need to take advantage of those picks.
We got to see what the next year ends up playing out. We know this year is a write-off.
Well, Matt, the thing is that the trade deadline is coming around. And if they do decide that they're going on a full rebuild, a lot of these players that are NHL regulars are going to likely be traded for picks or for assets or whatever the case may be. So when you're going to do that, that means going forward, there should be some more losses. But Montreal is so ass backwards that they're going to get rid of some of these players and they're going to have kids and they're going to end up winning. It's just... You know what I mean? So,
but that's fine too, right? Like if all of a sudden the kids start stepping up and they start winning and they start, knocking over giants and stuff, and it's not just like catching lightning in a bottle. It's for whatever reason they're elevating their game and playing well. Then that all the better for it. You're further along in your rebuild than you thought you'd be.
Now you asked if it was palatable. For me, the fact that Montreal made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, whether people said they shouldn't have, it was a COVID year, I don't care. They made it there. They gave us one of the funnest rides that we've had in several years. And albeit they did not win the cup, okay? Yep. They didn't win it. They still gave us our entertainment value. They still got us there. We still got to believe for a moment. We still got got away from the mindset of COVID for a period of time as Habs fans. I'm okay with going the next few years and saying we're rebuilding. We got as far as we can with the roster we had. It's time to move on from it and try to get to the next step, which would be to win the Stanley Cup. But the only way to do that is, like I said in a previous episode, take a step back so you can move 2 steps forward. And that's how I'm okay with it. But there's a part of our fan base that's not going to be okay with that because they didn't win the cup. Some are in their 70s and 80s and probably might never see the Montreal Canadiens win the cup again. And they're the ones that, and there's a loud majority that are going to say, nah, you know what? There was a Cinderella story. They weren't even supposed to get there. COVID. They need to win every game there. They have good pieces. You can have good pieces.
The Arizona Coyotes that you're throwing out there. That's just one man's opinion. For everybody listening,
it's my opinion.
You put the disclaimer on the screen.
Yeah, that is not for the
Arizona Coyotes.
For the 70s and 80-year-old listeners out there, that was one man.
Hey, it's a fact. We may not see them, including myself. I'm in my 30s. I may not see the Montreal Canadiens win the cup. I want to hope and believe that they will, but it's a possibility. But even at that, Montreal has good pieces. Soon. Shut up for a second. Montreal's got good pieces.
Jeez.
That's the line we keep hearing. The Arizona Coyotes has good pieces too. I wouldn't mind having Chychrun on my team.
You know what I mean? Only good piece they have.
He's on the way out.
Yeah,
and you're trying to get rid of him.
But all this to say, every NHL team has good pieces. We can't look at a team and say they have good pieces. I want the team, Montreal Canadiens, to be like Colorado, where you look and say that's a contender. Like Florida, they're a contender. You look and say it's not good pieces. They have a team, and they got star players. They got people that could get you up off your seat.
Colorado was terrible for a very long time before they got their team.
Yes, but it was also they were
same
also very
thing with
good.
Florida.
Colorado was also
are you prepared?
Very good
but are
for a
you
long time.
just quickly? Are you prepared to go through that to get your good team?
There's a difference.
That's a long time.
But Matt, there's a difference. Colorado won Stanley Cups before they went really bad.
But then they were bad for 10 plus years.
Yes, and they had 0 pieces after Patrick Roy, Ray Bourque, Forsberg, Sakic. After all those people retired, they had nothing left. Montreal still got a Suzuki. They still got pieces that you can say are fall into a core. So I don't think they'd be as bad for 10 years. They'd probably be bad. Montreal has a chance to be bad for about 5 years.
Yeah, I also think that, they suffered a lot from inept management, right? Both teams. And if you look at most teams that sucked for a long time, they didn't have the brightest right at the bat, right? They suffered for a bit and then they put the right people in place. Whereas I think now the Canadiens have a chance. They have Jeff Gordon there. They're going to hire a general manager. They're going to hire a new coach at the end of the year. I think they have a chance to start from the beginning. Exactly. And start from the beginning and really work their way from there and build together. It's rare that you see everyone on the same page as of year one, right? It's always okay. He sticks around for 2 years. The coach gets fired, then the GM gets fired, and then you kind of launch this rebuild. And you often say, "Oh, well, it was the past administration." Look at you pointed to the past. Oh, he won the award Chicago, right? Stan Bowman, but it was based on the work of somebody else. And it's rare that you're going to start from day one with hopefully the entire administration being the one bringing you forward.
I think there's a chance that.
No, but hold on. That's an excellent point, and I want to ask a question about that because I think it's very relevant about everybody coming in. And it's been mentioned in the media now that the next GM might be named within the next 10 days or so. And we know a couple names aren't on that list. You got Madden Jr. is not on that list. Seems like he's going to stay in Arizona, or not Arizona, Anaheim, and they didn't seem to want to let him go. Kent Hughes also seems to be very comfortable in his position as a player agent, so he's out of the mix too. But the rest are kind of up in the air. Are you guys cool with the fact that the GM might be named in the next 10 days or so? Or should this marinate a little bit more and give Jeff Gordon a little bit more time on the job? He might have only been here like a month and a half at this point. Or is it like they need to get somebody in that position and they need to start rolling it as soon as possible? Or would you prefer they really take the time to find the best person available?
I don't mind them hiring. Like, look, he's been here for a month and a half. I don't think he has to hire somebody right now. I think that Jeff Gordon can make, you saw him make that waiver claim for Kale Clague. And, there's moves Jeff Gordon can make himself. And he can make the trades at the trade deadline. No matter what anyone says, he could do it himself. He could pick up the phone and call and make those moves. He's done it before in New York. So I don't think he needs necessarily. I don't think it's like, oh, man, the trade deadline, let's just hire whoever we can in the next 10 days. But I'm also of the belief of, like, why wait? You have a list of candidates. There's not one that's going to magically become available. If Julien Brisebois magically become available, it's probably because he killed a bunch of people in Tampa Bay. He won't be eligible to become Habs GM. Sorry. There's no. You have your list. You know who it's going to be. There's no point in waiting. So I'm okay with them hiring. I don't think it's a necessity, but I think that overall, I'm okay with it, and I even prefer the sooner the better, so that you can work together as a tandem going forward, so that there's no friction. There's no like, oh well, I came in a bit too late. I wouldn't have done that move. It's clear and concise going forward.
Vito?
I'd prefer that they hire the GM sooner rather than later. Other teams might be waiting for Montreal to figure out what they're doing so that they can know which assets are available right now. There are players on the Montreal roster that other teams would want for either Stanley Cup run or even as part of their roster going forward. And Montreal's got a lot of veterans that other teams can use right now. So let's get the GM in. And Dave brought up a good point. You don't want Jeff Gordon to necessarily make a move that a future GM thinks that, hey, I wouldn't have made that move. I would have kept it and started off with some friction right away. Get the person in. The list of candidates have been the same names that have been circulating around. It's not like somebody else is going to be added to it anytime soon. And
you never know, but yeah, it seems like everybody's got the same list.
It's always the same names. It's always the same people. You're actually starting to see the list shrink, and it's shrinking not because the Montreal Canadiens said, yeah, we don't think that this is the candidate we want. It's shrinking because they're not part of the mix. They don't want to be in the mix anymore. So
what about the very sad news that Patrick Roy seems to be waiting by his phone? He didn't get a call yet. He has no interview scheduled. How do you feel about that?
If he has no interview scheduled and the other people were scheduled, maybe that's what Montreal thinks about having Patrick Roy as a general manager. Maybe they think the same thing as a lot of people think that are not just Patrick Roy fans and think we don't need a person right now that's going to be basing their decisions on emotion.
Patrick Roy would have gotten a courtesy. I mean, and I still think he'll get a courtesy interview. He'll get a courtesy interview because it's Patrick Roy, because it's the part of the fan base would hate on it, but also just out of respect for him, they'll give him a courtesy interview, and then they'll pass on him. They'll hire somebody else, and then he'll be recycled 10 years down the line when they need another general manager.
But yeah, sooner rather than later, in my opinion, because the time is now. Trade deadline's coming, and let's start making these moves soon.
Okay. I mean, I'm of the same mindset mostly. I kind of like but not for the same reasons. I want it done.
Out of the way, right? Like,
well, I want it done because I want it done because I want the action. I want something to see, to read, to talk about. I want to see the interviews. I want to see the action. That being said, I would prefer that maybe a little bit more time is given, and that you just really make sure that you're not rushing into something just to get somebody in place. Like Dave said, I think Jeff Gordon is more than capable of GMing this team until he puts a new GM in place. So I don't see the rush, and the people that they're going after are not like all of a sudden not going to be available. It's half people that are in media and sports agents, and the other half are people that are on other teams already. So whether you take them now or not, they're going to still be on that team. So I don't want to see them rush to do it. I understand that the scope of people that they're looking at need to have a particular characteristic, and those are finite. That being said, yes, I want it because the action and the fan in me wants to get a little bit of something going on here, a little bit of juices flowing with what are they going to do? What are they going to talk about and interact with the fans? And then the other side of me is kind of like just, you really only get one shot at this. Like Dave said, to start on a clean slate with everybody starting together at the same time, nobody of the old guard there to kind of be like, well, we used to do it. No, it's all fresh. You want to hit the ground running. You just want to make sure you get the right person for that. And that's my only concern.
While we obviously, a lot of us believe that this is Jeff Gordon's team.
It is.
It's you know what I mean? You still want what was kind of promised is that he's going to have his tandem. There's going to be somebody who's going to challenge him in the right ways and so on. Let's get that sooner rather than later. And just let's get ready for the trade deadline, eventually the draft, and the next phase is to rebuild this Montreal Canadiens into the future.
I agree. Okay. One little thing, fun little thing, just to get your takes on it. I kind of lifted this from Twitter. PJ Stock tweeted this a couple hours ago, and I thought it was super funny. So I want to ask you guys. He writes, and I'm paraphrasing, he believes there should be a certain year threshold on players to be on a team before they can come back and play against their former team and be given a tribute video. And he believes that threshold should be 6 years. He's tired of seeing a guy who spent maybe a postseason or whatever with the team, and then they come back and play against, and they're getting that tribute like they've been there for 15 years. Do you guys believe that these player tribute videos have been going off the rails a little bit and being doled out a little too frequently? And if so, do you believe a threshold should be put in place? Maybe a soft threshold, not like a league mandated one, but everybody kind of gets on the same page and says, all right, it's got to be at least like a 5-year thing. What do you think about that?
It depends. It depends the players, right? What are we talking about here? Are we talking about Joel Thornton hitting 1,700 games and they did a tribute video at every for the 4 teams?
No. I mean, no, not for something special. Like, for example, a great example would be
Kotkaniemi coming back to Montreal and they do a tribute video.
Ilya Kovalchuk was on another team and came back and played against the Habs. Corey Perry came back and played against the Habs.
See, that's interesting. That's interesting to me because Corey Perry meant a lot to the fans right here. Like Corey Perry in that small amount of time, and it's really a small amount of time because 1, the season was condensed, and 2, he sucks for half of it. So it was really just the half. Like he was good for what, 50 games in Montreal, max 40 games maybe. Yeah, but people
he did a lot.
Corey Perry as a Canadian forever. I guarantee you. Oh, we love Corey Perry. Look what Corey Perry brought. Look what Corey Perry did. Corey Perry almost got legend status here in Montreal. So he's an interesting character. I wouldn't have given him a tribute personally. I don't think it's necessary.
But if he can't get it.
But the 6 years that you talk about, all right, that PJ talked about, right? PJ said 6 years. That means Alex Kovalev, arguably the most exciting Montreal Canadian player of our generation, right? I
wouldn't have gone one.
He played 5 years in Montreal. So he doesn't get a
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, let's say it's a soft rule, right? If somebody like Kovalev comes back, he did 5 years. He didn't do the 6 years, but I mean, everybody knows what that guy was to the team. Clearly, he's getting a video. Clearly, when Saku left and came back, it's a no-brainer. He was here forever. He was the captain. That makes perfect sense. But talk about someone like, and I'm using the Canadians because it's obviously the most, in the top of my head, like Radulov.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, none for him.
Nothing for him,
the
huh?
The problem is that it's too easy to make these videos now. Okay, there's content regularly available from all these players. It's easy. Anyone can make a video in their basement. So all these teams, they're just it's way too easy not to just not. It gives them the team that's trying to make the in-game entertainment. They're like, oh man, what do we play? Do we play a Pitbull song or do we have a Yesperi Kotkaniemi freaking tribute?
Why not both?
Could you imagine if Yager came back to do another to play in a playoff round? Every team he's gonna have to go to is gonna be a tribute video.
So basically, both you guys are of the same mindset that maybe the tribute videos are being a little bit too often and should be reserved.
I think it's at the discretion of the team and what did the impact did that player make on that team. If he came in for 10 games and did sweet F all, then you can't really say, yeah, it's his former team per se, but no.
Okay, but let's be real, right? They don't do player tribute videos for every player. I mean, it's most often given to guys
Dude,
that
they just gave a tribute to Zach Hyman when he went to Toronto with no fans or anything. Like he had to stand up and he waved. They made a little.
apparently that wasn't
What
even
did
on
Zach
TV.
What
That
did
was
Zach Hyman
just
do?
for the players in the arena. Yeah, it's a good point.
Exactly, but that's the thing is that
That's
Zach
the point.
Hyman was a guy who was probably, you know what it is Zach Hyman was probably loved by whoever worked in the Leaf organization, right? Whoever was making that video loved Zach Hyman. So they and he knows that the team would have appreciated it because Zach Hyman was loved by Mitch Marner and Austin Matthews and all those people. So it kind of made sense for them to make that video. But at the end of the day, it's ridiculous. What did Zach Hyman exactly? Like you said, Vito, what did Zach Hyman do for Toronto, for the city of
Travis
Toronto?
Moen was loved amongst his peers. Do we have a tribute video for Travis Moen? Heck, Radek Bonk was liked too. You want to do a video for Radek Bonk?
And I'm
this
still
list keep
upset
going.
to this day that Radek Bonk didn't get his video.
Make one.
I should make one. But okay, boys.
Dave, what are you drinking there?
It.
That's classified information.
Yeah, don't worry about what he's drinking. It's none of
I'm
your
not crazy.
business.
It's just ginger ale.
Thought you had a
That's it.
scotch
In a fancy
going
glass. In a
Nothing
fancy
inside.
glass. No.
Thought you had a scotch going there. You almost got me
No.
excited.
Maybe a little scotch in it, but who knows? No one knows. Maybe
That'd be a
little
waste of scotch. That'd be wasting a
Yeah.
perfectly good scotch.
All right, it's to be discussed at another time. Gentlemen, I thank you very much. First episode of the new year. It's maybe started off with me fumbling my words a little bit, but I feel like we got our footing a little bit right after. For everybody else, thanks so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in again. I know we were off a little bit there for the holidays, but we're back in full force. So please expect to see a lot more content coming out from your boys at Get Pucked. As always, check us out on any social media that you are mostly attached to. You will find us there. You will see our schedules and any other fun postings that we might bring forth. On behalf of Vito and Dave, I am Matt. Happy New Year to everybody. Thank you so much. And this was Get Pucked. Get Pucked.